Next speaker is our National Church of England's environmental officer. But before that, she was our own environmental officer here in the diocese, I think, before Kathy. So it's a kind of progression, which is great for us. And Joe Chamberlain, welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you. And like I said earlier, we have national speakers for us. So we're so great for the resource you are to Church of England, and particularly here to our diocese.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good. No, this is on the next slide.
Yeah.
I'd like us to stand up.
Before I start, actually, I'm going to just do a thing that Kathy was going to do, but I'll do it. So the question is your church an eco-church? If you are, we're going to, after 3, shout out the name of your church. We'll see how much noise we make, all right? So if your church is registered, bronze, silver, even gold, shout out the name of your church after 3. 1, 2, 3. That was brilliant. Thank you so much. Brilliant. So this is me, Joe Chamberlain. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here. And I wanted to start with an appreciation of creation. We sang in that first hymn that creation is a manifold witness of God. And this is a view. I'm probably standing in the diocese taking this picture, but probably the view is Derby Diocese, probably. But it's beautiful, isn't it? Wonderful. We live in a wonderful place. This definitely is in the diocese. This is in Incliffe Park. This is my second favourite tree in Incliffe Park, which in full autumn splendour a couple of weeks ago. But it is only my second favourite tree, which is my favourite tree. This is the one at the entrance. It's a weeping beech. I'd never seen a weeping beech till I moved to Sheffield, and this is it in full winter splendour. And then this is also in Incliffe Park, taken in late summer. It's just a beautiful place to go. I'm in it nearly every day. I see kingfishers, I see heron, I see wagtails up the river. It's beautiful. But it's a place that's under threat. Many, many trees have been cut down because of ash dieback. Ash dieback is increasing in this country because of the changing climate. And you can see the park here even more under threat. This is the after effects of Storm Babette. Do you remember about this time last year? That's the cafe. Had to close because of the water. But this is nothing in comparison to what we saw in Spain a few weeks ago. I mean, the water's gone, but just the force of the water to pile up the cars, never mind the devastation to people's homes, and the horrendous loss of life that we've seen in Spain. But I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago in my national job with people from around the Anglican Communion, and they were telling me, gone too far. The mouse has gone, I have to scroll this way. I'll give you the facts. The impact in Cyclone Freddy, there we go. In 2023, Cyclone Freddy in Malawi destroyed 260,000 homes. So we've always had storms, but climate change is making them stronger and stronger. And so the waters rise higher and the impact is more and more devastating. So you might have seen this picture before. This is an image or a representation of the changing global temperatures from 1850, which is when we started really burning coal for the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, up to 2022. And each year is measured against the average for that period as a whole, blue for colder years, red for warmer years, and you can see that push to the hotter temperatures. When they did this in 2023, they had to have a new colour because it was even hotter, so a new, deeper red to represent the temperature change. And this is that same information shown in a different format, so you can see how the temperature's rising up through the years. There's a lot of talk, and you might hear it on the news this week while the climate conference is going on, the COP, about keeping global rise to 1.5 degrees. But you can see that last year we were over that. And have we breached that? Was that a temporary blip, or have we gone over 1.5? So there's a lot of anxiety around that. But it's not just the climate. We have talked about nature. This report, State of Nature report, came out last year, I think, And the UK is classified as one of the world's most nature-depleted countries. 1 in 6 species are at risk of being lost from Great Britain. Most of the habitats for nature are in poor condition. Only 1 in 7 were classified as good. The report did show that restoration projects can and do have benefits for nature and for people and for climate change mitigation. And then this is not from that report, but the statistic that 97% of UK wildflower meadows have been lost since the 1930s. That's a bit of a shock, really. This is leading people to be very anxious about these kinds of things. This is a study by in the Lancet, so this is a medical study. 84% of young people around the world are worried about climate change, and more than 50% report that they feel sad, anxious, angry, powerless, helpless, guilty. More than 45% said that their feelings about climate change negatively affect their daily lives. So that's very significant. And 75% said that they think the future is frightening. That's young people around the world. But it's not just young people. Adults are affected as well. This study, the ONS Opinions and Lifestyle Survey, showed that 70% of adults in Great Britain are worried about the impact of climate change. 43% were anxious about the future of the environment. Women were more likely than men. And there is a split between age, younger people more anxious, but even in people over the age of 70 are anxious about the future. So this is the context of our ministry. This is the world that we live in. It is the world which our churches exist in. So it's a world that is already suffering from the impacts of climate change. It is a world where there is injustice because those who have contributed the least to the problem are suffering the most. And it's a society where people are anxious about climate change and fearful for the future. So this is the world that we exist in and that we are trying to minister to. This is the world that your churches exist in. So we need to work out how do we minister in this context? How can we be good news to this world, to our neighbours at home and to our global neighbours? That feels like a big responsibility, doesn't it? How do we start with that? How do we work that out? We can only start from where we are, or if we're going to have a creation nature metaphor, we bloom where we're planted. So we need to learn not to stress about the things that we can't change, but to think about what can we do. As churchwardens, what are your spheres of influence? So as churchwardens, you have some influence over worship and teaching, church buildings and energy, church land, community engagement, and congregation and lifestyle. Now, the observant among you might find this list familiar. Yes, I know some people got it. That's the list of categories in the eco-church survey. So let's start with eco-church. Every church can be an eco-church, and we heard loads of churches being shouted out earlier, so we've got plenty in the room. And congratulations to everyone who has an award. So the eco-church survey has just been refreshed, so I'm going to do a little bit of a run-through of some of the changes, just to give you an idea. So you've still got the same 5 categories, but each category now starts with a question asking, has your church acknowledged the climate and nature crisis? And have you demonstrated your commitment to that? And that might be in a vision statement or in a policy document or some way that you've demonstrated that. So that's the first question in every section. In the worship and teaching category, you have these themes. Worship and prayer is about where and how you worship, and also the things that you use. What are the nature and climate impacts of the wine or the flowers or that kind of thing? Then there's a section about the people, about the leadership, about the pastoral care that you offer. Are you affirming those within environmental ministry? And then the teaching and discipleship. This is about integrating this kind of teaching into all the groups that meet in your church. The first change in this section is the addition of the word energy. It's now the buildings and energy section. And this is the section that's undergone the most review, the most refreshing, and it fits much better with the fact that the Church of England has set a target to get to net zero carbon by 2030, but not just the Church of England, the Methodists and many other denominations have set that target. So this has been changed to reflect. So if you're thinking, well, are we doing net zero or are we doing eco-church? Well, actually, they both work together. So if you're doing eco-church, you'll be doing net zero carbon at the same time. And then they've also introduced these pathways. So it fits better with your church and what's going on. So if you're a church or a cathedral that's used regularly, then you choose pathway 1. If you're a small church that's not used very often, then you'd probably choose pathway 2. That might be a festival church or something like that. And if you're a church that meets but not in your own building, you can still do this section. There'll be a different set of questions to do with your relationship with your landlord and things like that. And then the themes in this section are about your carbon and measuring your carbon. How do you become net zero? How do you look after the building and its maintenance? And then some questions about the people and the policies that you have. This section also has a new word. It's not just land, but land and nature. And again, you've got pathways, depending on what kind of land you have. So there's one, if you've got land that you look after or you own, which might be your churchyard or burial ground, might be a garden, might be other land as well. Or if you only have like a tiny strip around the side of your church, or if it's just got a car park, or you have no land at all, then you can choose the second pathway, and that'll send you on a different set of questions. And the themes in this category are around the biodiversity, so understanding that interconnectedness that it came out in the Genesis reading when Pete was talking about everything. We are part of everything, and you can start to explore that in this theme. Knowing what's in your land and monitoring it, and a bit of citizen science comes in the second section, and then again about people. And this is this space around our churches is not just for nature, it's for people as well, and how do we manage that and bring those two things together. Community and global, this is about how you work with your community, how you engage with some of the bigger issues like COP, like what's happening in other countries. Are you helping people to understand the issues, getting people on board? Are you taking action and communicating with others? It might involve things like getting to know your MP, or it might involve things like working with the local wildlife trust. There's lots of things you can get involved with in this section. And the final one is about the congregation. And this is about all the people in the church. Who do they talk to? Where do they have influence? What are their spheres of influence? What are their carbon footprints? What are the choices they're making about their lifestyle to change that? How are they able to connect with nature? Do they have that opportunity to enjoy it and to look after it? So I thought you would want to know how you were doing in Sheffield. So last time I checked, there were 71 churches in the diocese that have engaged with eco-church in some way or another. 26 of you have a bronze award, 12 have a silver, and 1 has a gold. And the diocese also has its bronze eco-diocese award. And so the next question is, how does that compare with all the other dioceses in the country? And you're bang on average. So, yeah, right in the middle, bang on average. So, yeah.
Who's the gold?
The Gold Church, I think it's St Mark's, Broomhill. Yeah. So, yeah. They've been at this for a long time, so, yeah. Okay, so there's a lot there, but you don't have to tackle it all at once. That's the other joy about this scheme, is that you can just take a bit at a time and work through it a bit at a time. But there's lots of support. Pete's already mentioned the church buildings team. There's the environment team, Kathy, Sally, Margaret, David, and then there's Josh and Joe in the church buildings team, and the parish support team. So I know Libby's here. So you might think, well, is that not different? No, it's not different. It's all together, because this is about our mission. It's about our buildings. So these things are not separated, but they're integrated. And I know that works really well across this diocese, that each part of the team at Church House cares about what you're doing on environmental issues. So each of those teams are interested and ready to help you. There's some money. There has been an offer of £100 towards LED lights or light fittings if you filled in your energy footprint last year, and 90 churches were able to take advantage of that. And there's a survey going around. If you haven't filled it in, there's a survey about whether you've got LED lights in your church. So make sure you fill that in before you go. There's a quick wins fund. If you've got, if only we had a couple of £1,000, we'd be able to do this. That fund is open. If you think you might like to apply for that, then have a word with some of the team here. That opened on Monday the 4th of November, so that's brand new. There's also help towards the cost of an energy audit, which you might qualify for. And then the Demonstrator Church project is a national scheme, and the idea of that is that you might be thinking, I'd like to do whatever it is. I've no idea how to go about it. What would that look like? And we want to make sure that around the country there's a church that you could visit that's done. It might be a heat pump, or it might be solar panels, or it might be different kind of heating system. So we hope that there'll be something nearby that you can visit if you're interested in that kind of scheme, and there should be one in Sheffield coming soon, so watch this space. I thought I ought to refer to the mission statement. So the Diocese of Sheffield is called to grow a sustainable network of Christ-like, lively and diverse Christian communities in every place which are effective in making disciples and seeking to transform our society and God's world. So, if we are trying to work out how to minister to a world that is suffering under the burden of the climate and nature crisis, and if we're trying to do eco-church and to bring the environment into every aspect of our church life, does that help with this mission statement? Or does this mission statement help with that environment work? And I firmly believe the answer to that is yes. I believe that unless we engage with our context and the things that matter to people around us, then we can't fulfill this mission. And also, if we are building communities that are diverse and are rooted in the various parts of our society, if we are making disciples who care about the world that they live in and seeking to transform it, then we'll be drawn into tackling the nature and climate and nature loss and climate change as well. So these things are, I think they belong together, they're tied up together, and you can't do one without the other. So I wanted to, the next part of what I'm going to say, give you some examples of churches that are doing environmental stuff, but is also mission at the same time. So this picture comes from St Matthew's Church in Walsall. St Matthew's Church is at one end of the town. Pete knows it well. The churchyard used to be a dirty and overlooked space filled with broken glass, needles, litter, graffiti. Over 5 years, volunteers have been working and transformed it into a haven for bumblebees, and the Bumblebee Conservation Trust have praised it as one of the most promising churchyard projects in the country. The bushes have been removed, foliage cut back, light let in, rubble cleared, weeding, and in their place they have a wildflower meadow, plants, grassy patches, and some areas for nesting bees. So this is not hives, but actually making a haven for the wild, the bumblebees, not the honeybees. But what they found as they transformed this space, the vandalism and antisocial behaviour diminished. They had a lot of problems about people leaving non-biodegradable plastic at graves, but there's been education and understanding, and that's pretty much stopped. And now people in the community say, I've left you some plants that you can put in your garden, or I've left you some compost, so they're leaving really useful gifts for the church. And the community now stops and enjoys the garden, enjoys the space, instead of all the antisocial stuff that used to go on. This church is in Aylesbury. It's a fairly deprived part of Aylesbury, and so it's a community garden, and it is the green oasis in that space. They started in 2019. The garden focuses on healthy eating and sustainable food growing. Because by definition, gardening is a long-term enterprise, they've built up relationships with the community and the neighbourhood around St Peter's, where the congregation had previously dwindled to a handful. Now it's growing because they've got these relationships going. They have a relationship with the local GP who prescribes time in the garden, part of this social prescribing. And the Young Offenders and Probation Service bring their young adults to learn horticultural skills as they reintegrate into society. It promotes exercise for body and mind, especially among people with dementia and other disabilities. And it inspires local people to grow their own healthy organic food, recycling of food waste, and in challenging everyone to reconnect more broadly with nature and the climate crisis and creation care. So those two examples show if you're doing stuff in your churchyard, it's a bit like a shop window. People can see what you're doing. It invites people in. But if you think a big project like that is a little bit daunting at first, then you could try something like Churches Count on Nature. So this happens during Love Your Burial Ground week, and you can see the dates for next year. And the idea is you open up your churchyard, welcome people in, and you have a look and see what you can find. What species can you see? Flowers, plants, mini beasts, mammals, trees. And then you record what you've seen, and it gets uploaded to the National Biodiversity Database. So your little churchyard can be part of the national picture of what the biodiversity is in England. You register your church, so you'll get all the resources, so you can say, well, I don't know, Red Admiral from whatever, it's fine. You get the resources to help you do that. And what we find is that when churches do this, so we surveyed them afterwards, the feedback that we get is this is always a really positive, really encouraging event. And 3/4 of people who we asked said that people came to this event but don't normally come to church. So it's a really good way of opening your boundaries and reaching beyond the people who normally come to church, bringing them into your churchyard. But we find indoor events bring people in, and they're attractive as well. So this was an event that took place at St Mark's Church, Highcliffe. They had talks, and half the people who came, because they were interested in the topic, don't normally come to church. So if you're engaged with environmental action, it's attractive, it's welcoming, people want to come in. And sometimes it feels all a bit of a middle-class pursuit, and I know I've got fairly posh accents standing up here, but this church is in one of the most deprived communities in Grimsby, in our neighbouring diocese in Lincoln. They were actually approached by a community group who wanted to work with them, and so they've worked together, and they managed to get money from Kew Gardens and the Royal Horticultural Society. They started with a potting shed, which is what they're building here. They've got planters, they're going to create a patch of wildflower meadow, and it's going to be like a seed bank for some very local seeds and plants in Lincolnshire. Then they'll grow food, the food will supply the cafe and the local people. And what it means is the church is now at the heart of the regeneration work that's going on in that community. So that last project and many others are made possible because of grant funding. And applying for money can be quite daunting. And one of the important things that when you apply for money is to say, why does your project deserve the money? What are the benefits, not just to you, but wider than you? So I wanted to flag up these two reports, which you may or may not have seen. They've been done by the National Churches Trust. There's the House of Good, that's the one on the left, and then the House of Good Health. And what these two reports have showed, they've spelled out the benefit which churches bring to communities because churches hosts hundreds of groups and clubs, toddler groups, lunch clubs, credit unions, food banks. So the House of Good report showed that churches provide £55 billion worth of social benefit to the UK every year. And the House of Good Health showed that churches provide essential support services that would otherwise cost the NHS an extra £8.4 billion a year to deliver. That's massive. And we need to demonstrate that and show that the work that we're doing, the investment in churches is really key and benefits the whole of society. A member of my team is writing a guide to help you translate that information into your grant application. So as soon as that's ready, I'll pass it to Kathy, then you can all see it. So then the last two stories are slightly different. They're not so much focused on nature, they're much more focused on the church and their work to becoming net zero. But so what I hope I've shown is that if you're doing authentic eco activities, they've helped churches to do community engagement, mission and growth. But sometimes if you're already doing a lot of that stuff, that gives you a really strong impetus to do eco stuff, because churches that are busy are expensive because you're doing loads of stuff. You've got the lights on all the time and the heating on all the time. So that's a really good motivator to see how you can be more environmentally friendly. So this is an example in St Dennis in Southampton. They've managed to cut £5,000 from their £20,000 energy bill by switching to LED lights, using triple insulated urns, because they have tea on the go all the time. So that's what you can see in the picture. They've insulated their pipes. They've got heated cushions on the office chairs, so they don't need to have the heating on all the time. They've installed smart meters, and they've got timers for lights and heating. Those are all pretty small things, aren't they? None of that is rocket science. You don't need a faculty for a triple insulator, and I don't think. And yet, with those small examples, you've got that's a quarter of their bill has been cut. And then this last example is a video. This is Holy Trinity Strad. Now, they did the big, scary thing and changed their gas heating for electric. This is a church that seats 250 people. It used to cost them £122 every Sunday when they were heating the church. Now they reckon it costs just £22. So I've got a video of this church, so I'll let the video do the talking.
We're here this morning at Holy Trinity Church to welcome the Age UK choir called Super Troopers. They meet here every Thursday morning to rehearse.
My name is Reverend James Turk. I am the team rector over here for the Stride Team Ministry. This church itself, Holy Trinity, was deemed as a big CO2 emitter.
We had gas central heating, and to heat the building, we had to fire up the boiler for several hours before its actual purpose.
The vision was to change that and actually to be a place of welcome and to be a place of future-proofing for future people. And I always think that church begins with community, and that community is about a welcome. And I actually want to be welcoming people into a warm, well-lit space like this that people can come and enjoy. That is what church is about.
Well, God created the world. We have a duty to look after it.
With a vision from the PCC, they looked at the lighting and the heating here, and a plan was put in place.
We decided to meet the net zero challenge of 2030, meet it ahead of time, and replace our gas boiler for an all-electric heating system.
So we have three types of heating here. We have the chandelier heater above us here, which covers the choir area and the officiant. We have under pew heating to every single downstairs pew in the church. And we can heat in various sectors, and we've got 6 sectors within the downstairs area. And then at the back, we have the under gallery heaters. And again, those can be split into 2 different sectors, so we can have a meeting at the back.
The cost element has been a huge saving. Just to run the boiler for a normal Sunday service cost around £122, but now we've priced it out and it's a mere under £20.
We're absolutely delighted with what we've got here. It's all come to fruition.
We are only ever asked as church to make a difference wherever we're at, where God has placed us. And if we can do that, then we'll make a world a better place, and that's our command.
We're going
Net zero carbon.
By 2030.
We're going net zero carbon by 2030.
I hope that was inspiring. I can hear lots of murmurs, so that's great. There's loads more case studies and videos on the Church of England website. And we've also made an impact report, so you can read all about it. So when these slides get shared out, you can scan that QR code and it takes you straight to the impact report, so you can see more. I've said any questions, but we might not have time, so we'll see how we're going.